Picture this. The year is 1927, and somewhere in the Caucasus Mountains, the last wild European bison is shot and killed. That's bison, B-I-S-O-N. It's the end of the line, the last animal. This huge animal, the European bison, was hunted to extinction. None of them left. And in fact, in the world at that point, there were only 54 of them, all of them in zoos, and this is a pattern which repeats with so many wild animals. They're either hunted and killed, or their habitats, where they live, those places are destroyed. So perhaps we get used to negative stories about the environment. But today, I'm going to give you some positive stories about the environment. In fact, I'm going to give you 3. Welcome, I'm Hilary, and this is a Learn Through Listening podcast. We help you learn English through listening with topics worth hearing about. Today, I've got 3 stories which will make you feel better. Stories about nature, bouncing back with a bit of help. And they're the kind of stories that we don't hear nearly enough. Along the way, you'll pick up some brilliant vocabulary about the animal world and about the environment. All of them in context so that you can learn in the most natural way. Let's get started. This is the story of an animal called the bison, B-I-S-O-N. And the European bison in 1927 were nearly all gone. That was Europe's largest animal, nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing up to a ton. And only 54 of them left in zoos. Fast forward to 2026. Well, now there are over 9,500 European bison roaming free, living in forests and grasslands in country after country. It's one of the most remarkable wildlife recoveries anywhere in the world. So the European bison went from 54 to over 9,500. Herds, that's herd, H-E-R-D, and it means a group of animals. Like cows, herds of European bison now roam in Poland, Belarus, Romania, Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and even here in the UK, where bison were released in 2022 in Blean Woods in Kent. And just last year, 9 European bison were released in Spain's Iberian highlands. The first time the species had set foot there for thousands of years. To set foot means to be present, to exist in a place. But the effect is more than just the bison. Bison aren't just large and impressive to look at. They're called a keystone species by ecologists. That's K-E-Y like key and S-T-O-N-E. Stone. So a keystone is the central stone in an archway, and it's that central stone that holds everything else up. We have lots of old stone bridges in the UK with keystones, the central stone that holds up the whole bridge. So when we say a keystone species, we mean an animal that lots of other animals, birds, insects, and plants depend upon. If you remove the keystone, the whole system collapses. Bring the keystone back, in this case the European bison, and the whole ecosystem starts to improve for other animals. How does this happen with the European bison? Well, they're quite messy. They graze, that's to graze, G-R-A-Z-E. That is the verb we use of animals who eat grass. They graze. So the bison graze, they trample on the ground, they thin out the dense plants by walking on them and let the sunlight get to the earth, and they distribute seeds on their fur. Wildflowers then grow, and this brings back the insects and the birds. One thing leads to another. Everything is connected in nature. I guess that's why we use the word ecosystem. So the European bison bring with them lots of things. And there's even more positive news. A 2024 study from Yale University, led by Professor Oswald Schmitz, found that a herd of just 170 bison in Romania's Tarcu Mountains is helping grasslands capture more carbon, roughly 10 times more carbon. That's quite a big effect. So here we're talking about reducing the amount of CO2. The researchers estimate that an extra 54,000 tons of carbon is sequestered every year. And that verb, to sequester, that's SEQUESTER. It means to capture and store. So carbon is sequestered by plants, by grasslands. It's the same action as that performed by the Amazon rainforest, and why we're concerned about losing it. Carbon sequestration is a big deal in conversations about the climate and CO2. Now, by the way, if you're enjoying hearing these stories and you'd like more listening practice with new vocabulary naturally woven in and no ads, go to adeptenglish.com and take a look at our subscription service. It doesn't cost very much and you get 8 extra episodes per month. Regular listening really does make a difference to your English language learning. And if you don't want to join our subscription service, you can still subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss the free podcast. So that first story is how a magnificent 1-ton animal is returning to the wild with great effects for conservation. What about story number 2? Well, this one concerns a different type of animal. In Bulgaria's Rewilding mountains, something special happened this spring. For the first time in 33 years, cinereous vulture chicks hatched in the wild. Now, I'm not expecting you to understand that sentence, so let's go through the words. Cinereous vulture chicks hatched. The word chicks, C-H-I-C-K, that means a baby bird. And to hatch, that's H-A-T-C-H, and that means when a chick or a bird comes out of its egg. So chicks are hatching. And what type of chick? They're cinereous vulture chicks. Well, a vulture, V-U-L-T-U-R-E, that's a bird that eats dead animals. And the type of vulture, cinereous. That's C-I-N-E-R-E-O-U-S. No, I hadn't heard of them either. But apparently they're called that because they're grey, like the colour of ash. So these cinereous vultures are Europe's largest, with wings or wingspans that reach nearly 3 metres. And these enormous birds disappeared completely from parts of Bulgaria. There have been none there since 1993, 33 years ago. But guess what? They're back. In 2022, a number of conservation groups joined together and began a reintroduction program. If you reintroduce something, you introduce it again. You bring it back. And these vultures were released into an area that they'd lived before. This spring, the conservation team confirmed that 8 pairs of vultures had formed, 4 began sitting on eggs, and 3 hatched new chicks, baby vultures, in other words. They're not very pretty, and it may be a small number, but that is massively important in conservation terms, and the numbers will rise. Now, vultures may not be your favourite bird, but they are nature's cleanup team. So like the bison, they have a big effect. Vultures feed exclusively on carrion. That's C-A-R-R-I-O-N. That means dead flesh, dead animal bodies. Not a pleasant thought, but vultures are very important for stopping disease. They clear up the carcasses. Without vultures to clean up, all sorts of diseases spread amongst animals. animals. So bringing back the vultures isn't just about saving the vultures. It's about restoring something that benefits many species of animals, birds, insects, and plants ultimately. And there is another plus for Bulgaria. The Vulture Conservation Foundation reports that these birds are also bringing tourists in, so more money for local communities. Good for nature and good for people. That's a proper win-win. So bringing animals back clearly can work. But our third positive environmental story brings another approach in. Here we're not adding things to nature, we're more taking things away. So our third story is about Europe's rivers. Do you know the word dam? D-A-M. A dam is a barrier that blocks a river and creates a pool of water. And many dams in Europe have been there for tens of years, even perhaps 100 years, some of them. And there's an organisation called Dam Removal Europe. They reported in 2025 that a record 603 dams had been removed. That's within Europe. And this means more than 3,740 kilometres of rivers have been reconnected. All that water suddenly flowing freely again. Why were these dams built in the first place? Well, most were built to support hydroelectricity generation, the generation of electricity through the power of water. But now many of these dams are too costly to maintain, and they don't generate that much electricity. We have newer ways of doing that, and removing the dams is good for the environment. Sweden led the way with 173 removals of dams. Finland removed 143, and Spain 109 dams. There are a lot of dams in Europe, aren't there? And in many places, the benefits to the environment can be seen. In Finland, it has been found that salmon, the type of fish maybe that you eat in sushi, and the type of fish which swim upriver, that's the salmon. So salmon and brown trout have returned to the rivers, returned to their old habitats. So nature rewilds, renews, begins again. When you remove a dam, the fish come back and they can reach their spawning grounds. That's spawning. To spawn in a fish's world means to reproduce, to lay eggs. That's to spawn. So the fish in some places haven't been able to reach their spawning grounds for years. And there are lots of positive effects of more fish. Sediment, that's the dirt at the bottom, flows downstream. Riverbanks reform. Water temperatures drop. And there's more oxygen in the water. The whole ecosystem wakes up, if you like. So we often think of conservation as protecting what's left. But this story is about taking something away that's been man-made, introduced, and which has done damage to a natural environment. The EU has now set a target to restore 25,000 kilometres of rivers to a free-flowing state by 2030. That's an ambitious goal, but a good one. This is about regenerating nature, and the whole approach has a name, rewilding. To rewild is R-E-W-I-L-D. Rewilding means helping nature return to her natural state. Nature is a wonderful thing, and often she just needs a helping hand.